Happy Libra season. We have just entered one of the most beautiful seasons of the year. And I don't say that to be biased, but Libra is literally ruled by Venus, which is the planet of beauty. So we will get into the themes of the season and how the energy is shifting, what planetary movements are happening this season in a second. But I just want to talk about Libra as a sign, as an archetypal energy first. So Libra season this year is happening from September 23rd up until October 22nd. So if you Google the astrological seasons, you might see that the dates shift depending on what source you go to. And that's really because the dates will actually shift every single year. It's not always on the exact dates that the seasons change, but it is always towards the end of the month, like the last week of the month. So Libra season, all you really need to know is that it lasts from late September to late October. Now, Libra is the seventh sign in the zodiac. It is an air sign, it is a cardinal sign. So we are back in an air season, and air as an element is fast, it is speedy, it's very heady, it's very up here in our minds. It's all about the intellect, it's all about communication, it's all about mental stimulation. So moving from Virgo season into Libra season, we've kind of finished up with Earth. We finished up with solidifying and stabilizing and cleaning house, essentially. Now it is time to get back out there and to mingle and to reconnect with what everyone else has been up to lately. So let's move on to planetary rulership, because Libra is ruled by Venus, like I said, and Venus, interestingly enough, rules Taurus as well. So it rules two signs in the zodiac. So if you want to hear more about its influence on Taurus and how that presents itself, you can listen back on the beginning of Taurus season, that episode, that will go into that planetary rulership a little bit there. So Venus represents love, it represents beauty, it represents money, it represents what we value, what we care for. It's the aesthetics, it's our pleasure. So this is a season of love. This is a season of beauty. This is a season of reinventing yourself, especially if you have been putting in the work during Virgo season. I think last episode, I talked about Virgo season almost being like trimming the fat. That's kind of, if you've been doing that, then this season really is like, okay, we've got a lot more space now because we've gotten rid of a lot of the things that don't matter or that we don't need anymore, we don't need to carry anymore. Now what? How do we fill in this space? So I was speaking actually to one of my good friends, and she said that to her, Virgo season feels like a cleanup season. And that's exactly what it is. Like, we are now in store for a refresh of who we are. And in Australia, where I am, we have just hit spring as well. Well, not just hit spring, but September is when spring starts for us. So in this new energy and this fresh energy, that is perfectly on par with the themes of Libra season for us here. So let's get into the themes of Libra and Libra season. Starting off with relationships. This is kind of the big one. Like, anyone who has studied astrology even a little bit knows that Libra equals relationships. That's kind of what the sign or the archetypal energy is known for. So Libra is all about our one-on-one connections. This could be romantic, which is how it's often, what's the right word here? Understood to be, but it can also be platonic. It's any relationship where we are just one-on-one with the other person. So this is all about the dynamics of how we interact in those one-on-one relationships, in our interpersonal relationships. So with relationships and with Venus being all about love, like, this is loving love. This is being in love with being in love, And being Venus ruled, this is the idealistic person. It's the romantic person who just wants to be loved and they just want to love someone. If we think about oppositions, Libra is opposite Aries. So whereas Aries is all about me, Libra is all about we. Aries is all about independence. Libra is all about relationships and how we interact with someone else, what the power dynamic is like with someone else in the picture. Now, on the topic of relationships, it's really important for Libras to have harmony in their relationships, and often they will do it at their own expense. So they will do whatever it takes to keep the peace. If it means keeping everyone else happy, they're happy to give up their needs or their wants. So, kind of on the flip side of this, right, in more of an unhealthy way, this can be sweeping things under the rug. This can be a buildup of frustration or resentment or, just those little cases of not having your needs met or not being heard or not being understood. And it just builds and builds and builds until they blow up, until the smallest thing just gets them to explode out of the blue. So that is kind of what we don't want and what we want to watch out for. That's why it's really important throughout this season to keep coming back to yourself, keep reconnecting with what are my needs, what are my wants in this situation? Am I expressing them, or am I sweeping them under the rug, or am I kind of dismissing them or suppressing them just to keep everyone else happy? So keep coming back to yourself, keep coming back to your own individuality, who you are, and make sure that you're also maintaining and respecting your boundaries too, and expressing that obviously so that others can also respect your boundaries. Especially because we are in eclipse season 2, we need to have this balanced focus on our inner self. We need to keep reflecting, because that is what eclipse season, that's a huge part of eclipse season, and we will talk about that later on as well. So on the topic of relationships as well, this is kind of like a subcategory, if you will. This season is also teaching us about healthy codependency. This is also getting us to reflect on areas where we have been unhealthily codependent and how we can move that into a healthy codependence. And I say healthy and unhealthy codependence because humans, we are codependent. Like, we need to depend on each other. We thrive in community. That's how we are supposed to be. And this kind of hyper independence that we have in today's society, being the boss babe or not needing a man, or, all of these narratives and these stories that we have, this hyper independence is very much a trauma response. And I won't get too into it today, but in one of our membership calls from a few months ago, and funnily enough, I'm pretty sure it was a membership call on relationships specifically, we talked about how this hyper independence response is there to help us stay safe, or help us, not be hurt by others, because no one actually can get close enough to hurt us. But what that does is it also keeps us away from the types of deep connections that we really want, from actually connecting with other people. So this season, watch out for where you might have a tendency to lose yourself within the relationship, or where you might be trying to please others, or when you're trying to manage everything and everyone so they can all get along, but then in the process, you're betraying yourself. So just watch out for that level of unhealthy codependence where you really are kind of losing yourself, and then something drastic has to happen, or you have to burn a bridge for you to feel some semblance of individuality and independence again. So how do you kind of balance that? Your independence with your healthy codependence, and being in a relationship healthily. And again, that doesn't have to be just romantic, it can be platonic as well. It could be like a friendship where a lot of the time boundaries are really fluid and they're kind of lacking there. You just want to learn how to maintain your independence while in that interpersonal state, or in that interpersonal relationship there. So the next major theme is beauty. So if you know a Libra in your life, or you have Libra placements, or you are a Libra, by the way, happy birthday season to you. You might find that you have an artistic eye, you have an eye for style, you have an eye for design. And this makes this season a really good time to experiment with different aesthetics. It can be, you might have seen someone online on social media that you're like, oh my God, I really wish I could dress like that. Or like, that would be a fun thing for me to try. This is about stepping out of your comfort zone a little and just trying something new, trying something that you're like, I wonder what that might feel like on me. And, you know, beauty, we talk a lot about like inner beauty and, self-love on the inside, but I feel like in the spiritual community, there's kind of a taboo. I don't know if that's the right word, but there's a resistance to talking about external beauty because that seems more shallow in a way. And so this is even more important in Libra season to identify whether you do have shame around your external looks or putting effort and investing in your external looks. And again, we need to bring nuance into the conversation here because self-love, yes, of course it is through the kind of work that we do internally, in our subconscious mind, in our energy, in how we view ourselves, in our self-concept, all of those really, really important things. But it's also how we dress and how we adorn ourselves. And I'm just going to bring in a personal story here because I also used to carry a lot of shame around external looks. As I was growing up, my mum would always say like, all the girls who only focus on their looks are just empty vases. Don't be an empty vase, like the meaning there is that they have like nothing inside and they're just pretty, but they're empty inside. And I get that she meant well, right, by having me focus more on who I am as a person, but that inadvertently gave me a lot of shame around wanting to look cute or wanting to look pretty, because then that voice would be like, oh, well, if you're wanting to look cute or you're putting a lot of attention into how you look, then that means you're blah, blah, blah. So feeling good in your body, in how you look, in how you take care of your external beauty, your external self, how you dress, your makeup, your hair, your nails, whatever it might be, that is not, it doesn't take away from self-love. It doesn't take away from being someone who really values themselves, because it's just an add-on. It's our external world, our external beauty, how we look is an add-on to our self-love. If we feel good looking at ourselves in the mirror, that is going to make us feel better in general as a whole. It's an add-on to our self-love. It's a different side to our self-love. It doesn't take away from it. So that's a really important kind of lesson that we need to integrate during Libra season. It is okay to want to care about your looks and how you look to other people. But obviously, more importantly, you want to look good for yourself, right? So this brings me to balance, because this is another big part of Libra energy. And if we kind of tie this back to relationships, Libras tend to be the peacekeepers. They are the ones who bring harmony. They are the ones who mediate disagreements and conflicts within certain situations. So if we look at the symbol for Libra, it's the scales of peace. It's the scales of justice, right? They are there to keep the balance. And the reason they can take on this role is because they really are able to understand multiple different viewpoints and perspectives. Again, tying this back to being an air sign, which is all about the mind and, having different perspectives and different thoughts and different ideas and being able to kind of hold them all in the one space. And when they do this, when they are holding so many perspectives, it's really easy to get stuck in their head and to really overthink things and overanalyze things. So during this season, if you do catch yourself doing that, really important for you to ground, to find ways to stay connected to your body as well. And it's important to realize that in certain situations, it's simply not your job and it's not your role to have to make sure that everyone is happy. Like, the burden of that is not on you. In the same way, not everyone is going to like you or to vibe with you, and that is totally okay. So with this need for balance and this ability to have so many seemingly contrasting views and perspectives and being able to understand all of that, this means that they can also be very indecisive and have trouble with deciding what they actually want to do. Or, a lot of the time when they are indecisive, the indecision comes from, well, if I do this, how will other people view this decision? Or what will that mean in terms of how other people see me? So if we were to take other people out of the equation, what would you want to do? That's kind of the question that you want to ask if you are faced with that indecision there. And I guess the good news is that things are going to be happening for you during eclipse season. So you might not even have the chance to make a decision. That kind of sounds really like dreary, but eclipse season, I talked about this in a post a few weeks ago. I think I called it like a course corrector, a cosmic course corrector. That's what I said, because that's exactly what it does. It reveals what's been hidden from us. It reveals what we may have been avoiding wanting to see. It reveals what doors we've been hesitant to close. It really pushes us in the direction that we need to go in, whether or not we like it. Eclipse energy is always intense, and it's always there to get us moving in the right direction again. So a couple days ago, we had our first eclipse in this eclipse season. So we have 2 in total. A couple days ago, we had the Pisces full moon, which is an eclipse. And then on the 3rd of October, we are having the Libra new moon and solar eclipse. That's the second one. And it's the 3rd of October here in Australia, but depending on your time zone, it might be on the 2nd for you because it's pretty early in the morning here for us. So I think pretty much everywhere else in the world is on the 2nd. Now, eclipse energy lasts for a few weeks after our last eclipse. So even after the one on the 3rd of October, for the next couple of weeks, think of it like ripples in a pond. Like when you leave a pool or, a body of water, you leave behind ripples, even though you're not physically in the water anymore, right? That's kind of like eclipse season and the effects of it rippling out into other areas of your life and taking that time to kind of settle down. So pay close attention to what you experience and what you feel during this season. Now, sometimes eclipses can help you see things and learn things through other people as well. So not only do you want to be reflecting and paying attention to what's happening to you, also pay attention to the stories that people around you tell you, what's been happening in the lives of the people adjacent to you. As an example, when the eclipse energy first started building a couple of weeks ago, that was when I found out that someone I had personally looked up to as an inspiration wasn't who I thought they were. So details aside, it really made me come back into myself. Like the feeling that I got when I was moving through that realization, it literally felt like my consciousness or my focus crashed back into myself. It was like a return to myself, which honestly is very on brand for the Pisces eclipse we just had, right? With Pisces being all about illusions, that eclipse helped us to reveal hidden truths, and it was all about coming back into our own truth, deepening our connection with who we are and our internal why and our internal journey. So throughout the next few weeks, it's important to slow down. It's important to reflect. It's important to trust that whatever is happening is meant to happen. And we might not know why it's happening right now. We can only trust that when things settle down, we can look back and go, right, that's exactly why that had to happen. I use a fishbowl analogy for this too. Like imagine if you're a fish in a fishbowl and someone's just come in and stirred the water. There is soil and debris kind of flying around everywhere. The water is murky. You can't really see anything. And you are just like, what in the fresh hell is this, right? Like what is happening right now? Until the soil settles, you can't actually see clearly. But for someone on the outside, they can clearly see, right, things are being moved, things are being shifted, and the soil and the dust just needs to settle. So as we're going through eclipse season, this is not the time to be forcing anything to happen. This is really the time to just kind of be like, okay, I'm just open and willing to receive and accept what is happening in my life. So again, you want to slow down, and this is to have enough space so you can reflect and you can really see and observe what's going on instead of getting caught straight up in the emotional waves of things. So slowing down, reflecting, and trusting. Now, following the eclipse, we'll have a full moon in Aries on the 17th of October. And speaking of these lunations, I have a free newsletter that goes out the day before each new and full moon. And the newsletter explains all the energies at work. It goes into what the planetary influences around the new and full moon is as well. So I'll pop the link to that in the podcast notes if you want to sign up for that. Now, moving on, we have retrogrades in play this season as well. So in early October, Jupiter is going to go retrograde, and that is happening 3 days before Pluto stations direct. So Jupiter goes retrograde, 3 days later, Pluto stations direct. So essentially, we will have those 3 days where all 5 of our outer planets are in retrograde. Now, we have 10 planets in total that we work with, which means that half of our planets, like I said, all of our outer planets are going to be retrograding, which is crazy. And if we think about it, the moon and the sun never retrograde. So really, when we talk about retrogrades, we only have 8 planets to work with. So 5 is a huge amount, and they're all retrograding at the same time for those 3 days. So if a baby was born during those 3 days, their chart would be insanely interesting. Like, that would be crazy. So there's quite a bit of volatile energy. This energy is highly charged and highly emotional around this period of time. And I actually write out weekly and daily forecasts for my membership. And inside, you also get a Google Calendar integration with all the major transits that are happening. So essentially, you can open up your calendar, click on a transit that's happening that day, and there's going to be a little blurb of what's going on, how the energy is changing. Now, I'm going to be introducing a separate tier for my membership specifically for staying updated with these forecasts. So my membership is reopening in October, so you can stay tuned for that, but I will also pop the link in the episode notes as well. Now, coming back to retrograde itself, Jupiter is going to go retrograde in the sign of Gemini. Gemini is an air sign, and it's all about communicating, it's all about learning, it's curiosity, it's how we use our words. And retrogrades are all about the re-words, so reflecting, reassessing, reevaluating, you get the idea. Now, during a retrograde, there can be blocks around accessing that planet's energy externally. And the reason for that is that we then have to reflect on it internally, and we have to learn how to access it or to awaken it within ourselves first. So Jupiter is the planet of joy, expansion, luck, optimism. So during this retrograde, which is going to last for about 4 months, this really is about reconnecting to our internal sense of abundance, our internal sense of joy, our internal sense of adventure as well. And being in Gemini, this is then connected to reflecting on your beliefs, on what your ideas are, on your thoughts, on your communication patterns, basically on your mind. It's thinking about and reflecting on how your mind actually works, and what role your mind and your beliefs and your stories play in your sense of joy and expansion and abundance. Do they align with the vision that you see for yourself? Do they align with the version of you that has what you want and thinks the same way that you do? Or are they holding you back? Or is there a gap between how you think now and how that future dream self, dream version of you thinks and acts? Now, 3 days later, we have Pluto stationing direct in Capricorn. And this is Pluto's final time moving through Capricorn in our lifetime. Isn't that crazy? Like, I just need a moment to kind of let that sink in, because never in our life will we ever experience Pluto being in Capricorn again. And that's because Pluto takes nearly 250 years to make one full rotation. So we are going to be long gone by the time it comes back around to Capricorn. So it's crazy. It is going to go direct around mid-October, and then it will have another month in Capricorn before it moves firmly into Aquarius in mid-November, and it will be in Aquarius for good after that. So this is like a final farewell. This is a final opportunity to release any last lingering remaining issues that we've been holding on to before we step into this new era. And because we are talking about Pluto, this is about power dynamics, this is about transformations. And we can see this very much on a societal level. I mean, if you just Google Pluto moving into Aquarius, you will see how much it's transformed the world over the past few years. But essentially, the focus with Pluto in Aquarius is going to be on innovation. It's going to be on the progression of humanity. It's going to be how we come back into community. So Pluto in Capricorn was very concerned with things like social status, with things like hierarchy. Those are themes of Capricorn. But Pluto in Aquarius, like Aquarius is not concerned about those things at all. It's much more concerned about community. It's much more concerned about bringing everyone together and finding a new way of doing things, being better. It's very forward thinking and it's very futuristic. So we can also see lots of advancements in tech as well. And as a side note, if you have taken my Chinese astrology mini course, you will know that this year we've also stepped into what is known as the age of 9. And these ages in Chinese metaphysics are 20-year cycles. So we've just entered a new 20-year cycle this year. And this cycle is really focused on things like integrity, on personal truth, and really aligning with our truth and living in our truth. So these themes are all lining up like crazy. And yeah, the next couple of years as we settle into this Aquarian energy is going to be really interesting to see and to track. So that is essentially what is going on this Libra season. If you've enjoyed this episode, I would love for you to leave a rating, and happy Libra season. I will see you next month.